Obedience. 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 Man, that is such a tough thing to do sometimes. When someone asks us to do something, it can be so hard for us to want to obey. For you and me, the amount of obedience that we will do always directly relates to how much we trust the person asking us to do something. One of the best examples I can think of where obedience is so vital is football. When we are on the pitch playing football, we need to obey the manager or coach that's over us. And if we choose to ignore them, it could be vital for our team and for our own future as a footballer. A big reason this is important is in football, your manager can almost always see things that you can't. And when they ask you to do something, they may be asking you to do something that you just don't know is happening around you. And we have a small moment of time, the split second where we can make a decision. Will I obey what they ask, or will I do what I want instead? And a lot of times when we do what we want, we may miss out on accomplishing the thing that our manager saw from the sidelines. They may have saw a perfect opportunity to score a goal, but we missed it because we were unwilling to obey. This isn't just something we do in football, but this is something we do in all areas of life. Think about it. When your parents ask you as a little kid to step back from the street, they may be wanting you to obey them instantly because there's a car coming very quickly towards you. And you choosing to obey them without questioning, without asking why, could potentially save your life. And the same is true with God. When God asks us to do something, He wants us to obey. God can not only see everything from His perspective, but because God is perfect and all-knowing, when He asks us to do something, we can trust that what He is asking us to do will be better for our lives. Thankfully, you and I don't have to wonder what God is asking us to do. You see, God has written down in the Bible everything we need to know about Him, His creation, and most importantly, what He wants us to do with our life. You see, the Bible is made up of 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry. That's all about God's creation and His commands for us. It tells us the one big story that God is trying to tell, the story of Jesus. In today's lesson, we're going to be opening up to the very first book of the Bible called Genesis. Genesis means origin or beginnings, and that's exactly what it is. The first book of the Bible tells us exactly how God created the world and how He created you and I to live in it. From it, we can learn so many wonderful truths about who God is and the history of how everything began. Today's lesson goes all the way back to right after when God created the world and filled it with people. The very first people were Adam and Eve. And when Adam and Eve came into the world, everything was perfect. But then Adam and Eve made one choice that changed everything forever. They chose to sin. And when they chose to sin, sin enters the world and death and problems and evil take over. We continue on, and now more and more people are choosing to sin. And sin is simply this: it's doing what we want instead of what God wants us to do. And the more people sinned, the more evil there was, and the more bad things that began to happen.
And that's exactly where we pick up our story in Genesis 6, verses 5 through 8. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that He had made man on the earth, and it grieved Him to His heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord.
The world had gone upside down with people doing the opposite of what God wanted to do. Instead of growing closer to God, they were running away from Him as fast as possible. That is everyone but Noah. Noah stood out among the rest of the people on the earth because Noah chose to do what is right. He chose to obey God even when everyone else wouldn't. The Bible tells us that Noah obeyed the commands of God. Anything God asked him to do, Noah did it. And God asked Noah to do some really big things. He asked Noah to build a giant boat called an ark that would hold not just Noah and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives, but also 2 of every kind of animal on the earth. And Noah would spend years and years and years building this in preparation for God to do something big. God was about to do a fresh start on everything in the earth. He was going to send rain for the very first time. Up to this point, it had never rained before. And God was going to protect those who obeyed and trusted Him by providing a place of safety and salvation in the ark. And so Noah builds the ark, and God sends all the animals, and Noah collects all the food and fills it up. And then God tells him in 7 days it is going to begin to rain, and it will rain for 40 days and nights. I imagine during that time Noah was warning as many people as possible. It's going to rain. You need to come into the ark. But of course, no one had ever seen rain before. And instead of believing God and believing in Noah, they chose to ignore him. And in the end, when it did rain, the only people who survived were Noah and his family. Noah and his family choose to obey God. They go into the ark when God tells them. And as God promised, the rain began to fall. And it rained and rained and rained, so much so that the entire earth was covered in water, a worldwide flood. Noah and his family spent a whole year on this ark, waiting for the waters to come back down. But eventually, the ark rested on top of Mount Ararat, and it was dry enough for Noah to leave the ark. And when God said, "Leave the ark," Noah and his family took all of the animals and they came out of the ark together. And then an amazing thing happened. Noah worships God, and God makes a huge promise to Noah and to you and I today as well in Genesis chapter 9. Verses 8 through 13 say this: "Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, 'Behold, I will establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth. I will establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by waters of the flood, and never again shall there be flood to destroy the earth.' And God said, 'This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you, for all future generations. I have set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth.'" God made a promise with Noah and all of his descendants, which is you and me. You see, everyone in the earth is a descendant of Noah. We all come from one of his 3 sons. But God made this promise that never again would he destroy the entire earth with a worldwide flood. And his promise can be seen through the rainbow. Whenever we look up and see a rainbow, that is a reminder of the promise that he made with Noah. God created rainbows to be a promise to all human beings on the entire earth that he would never do such a thing again. Just as God provided an ark of salvation for Noah and his family, God provides a salvation for you and I too, and that is Jesus. Jesus is our ark that saves us from sin. One of the ways that we come to knowing Jesus is by obeying his words and trusting that what he says is true. Obedience is so important for our life. When we choose to obey God, we're not just trusting God, but we are acknowledging that God knows better than you and I can know ourselves. When we trust God and obey him, we know that it will keep us from sin because God would never command us to sin, and it will help us to do what is right even when it's tough. That is why God gives us so many great commandments in the Bible to obey. He is protecting us and guiding us and directing us. And I hope that you will find a way to choose to obey God no matter the circumstances, no matter what is happening, because you can trust God no matter what. Hope to see you all again really soon. Jesus, Jesus, it's all about Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Hey, what'd you think of the lesson?
It was good. It was all good.